I don't frequently have these, revelations of, oh, this is how it is, or this is what I need to do. It's like I'm not always that super decisive. Um, I just sort of get into things and do them. But when something really feels wrong, it's like there's something very powerful inside me that won't let me continue with it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Journey to Legacy podcast. My name is Wayne Veldsman. Thank you so much for being here today. I have for you an amazing expert copywriter, Mr. David Garfinkel of Novus AI. David has been in the copywriting space, in the writing and storytelling space, since what he will tell you, he was 8 years old when he wrote his first newsletter. And he actually responded to a story on the back of a cereal box. David tells some really great stories throughout this interview. And you actually get tons of actionable advice, not just on marketing and writing, but also in the space of AI and artificial intelligence to actually help you in all of the marketing and writing for your business, to write better advertisements, to sell better products. And so I think you're going to like it a lot. David is a lot of fun, tells a lot of great stories. And so without further ado, we'll hop right on into the episode. Enjoy. David, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing today?
I am so great. I appreciate you being here, coming all the way from San Francisco, huh?
Yeah, Wayne. The magic of Zoom and the internet, huh?
Yeah, we can talk to each other instantaneously from across the world.
Yeah,
What a blessing it is. David, why don't you kick us off? Tell everybody just a little bit about yourself and what you're doing with Novus AI these days.
sure. So my name's David Garfinkel, and I'm a coach to advanced copywriters and business owners who are interested in direct response. Number one. Two, I'm an expert on persuasion stories and author of a book. Oh, here's my little prop, the Persuasion Story
Oh,
Code. And
beautiful.
thanks. And but the newest thing is, as you mentioned, Novus AI. Um, I connected with an old mentoring client, someone I'd mentored years ago, who's gone on to terrific success. My goal as a coach is to get my clients to exceed me in the number of dollars they bring in with their sales letters. And Jason Parker has done that. But he's also developed some amazing, and I think industry leading, tip of the spear ways to use AI to actually create
Yeah.
copy that works, that reads as authentic in your own voice. And so I'm a partner with
Mm.
him and Scott Zetlin in Novus AI. We run a mastermind once a week, and we're, you know, plowing forward.
Yeah, plowing forward, no doubt about it. It's great to hear when coaches say that their goals are to help their students sort of exceed themselves, right? I think that is the mark of a great teacher, that they want to out teach themselves essentially. And so Novus AI, give us a little bit more in depth. What are you guys doing? What is the company's purpose, reason for being?
Well, our purpose is to bring quality AI to the field of direct response copywriting, like ads you see on Facebook, sales pages, video sales letters, webinars, YouTube ads. Up until now, most of the stuff has been templated at best,
Mm,
but it hasn't actually been in the voice of the person using it. And we've
mm,
created a
mm.
technology, and when I say we, I'm mostly talking about Jason, but
Yeah.
we've created a technology we call authentic AI agents. And we've found a way to incorporate the voice and the speaking style and the storytelling style of the user, customize it so that a user um, can come up with something they want to say or sell or otherwise write, and have the AI do it for them and save vast amounts of time. We have people in our mastermind um, who already knew how to write copy and do these things pretty well, who are getting better results with the stuff written by AI their than stuff they've written themselves. And of course, they're saving tons of time.
Tons of time, getting better results. That's pretty surprising. And so, I think AI is still a pretty controversial thing, right? And so we're talking specifically about AI to be used as a writing tool, right? To be used for
Right,
copywriting here.
right.
Um, and I mean, when AI first came out, before you guys started Novus, right? How did you feel about people actually using AI to replace copywriters?
Very negative. I
Uh,
was disgusted by AI when I first
oh
saw what
wow.
people were doing with it. The thing about AI is it can do amazing things, but you have to know a lot before you start using it so
Mm,
that you know to tell it how to do what you want to do, and you need to be able to tell it what to do. And that sounds simple, and it's actually kind of intricate. Um, AI is a very, very powerful tool. I mean, you take an old frying pan and a beat up spatula, and you give it to a world-class chef, and they're going to make a delicious meal. You give it to someone who doesn't
right.
know how to cook, and they're going to set off the smoke alarm in their kitchen. You know, so
Yeah. Yeah.
AI, it has intelligence, but it needs to be directed. It it
Sure.
it
Well said.
needs constraints. It needs to know what to do, how to do it. You need to know how to tell it, and those things are complicated.
Yeah, it's very complicated. I mean, well said. I like this analogy of a old frying pan, a broken spatula, right? You give it to somebody like myself who knows very little about cooking, and I'm going to do next to nothing with it, maybe fry a couple eggs. You give it to a professional chef, and they can really make magic happen. And so it's similar to what AI is. If you can direct it appropriately, then you can make magic happen. But the everyday user is going to get pretty poor results. And I mean, I know, so Jason that developed most of the tools, but and then you guys are putting out your own, like you said, they're called authentic AI agents. Is
Hmm.
there any sort of simple tips though that for somebody that's using, let's just say, Chat GPT, that they might be able to immediately implement to get a little bit better responses?
Um, yeah. Um, be specific in your instructions. And boy, this is hard because you have to sort of go inside your own thinking to do what I'm about to say. But understand the assumptions you're you're in general instructions, and spell out those assumptions in the instructions so that um remember, AI, if you want AI to go north by northwest, you have to understand AI can go anywhere in the compass, and it's random where it's going to go. You need
Mhm.
to know how to tell it to go north by northwest. And you know I mean, the main thing to understand is the quality of your output is directly related to the quality of your input. And the quality of your input is the information you give it, the questions you ask it, and understand you're having a conversation. I mean, I did something last night. I created a business document, and I went into Claude, uh, Sonnet 3.5, and I said, Claude, I need you to do this document. Here's what it's about. But then I said, do you have any questions? Do you need any other information? Most people never
Nice,
think that far. And it said yes. And it gave
nice,
me 5 questions.
beautiful.
And I answered them. And then it gave me the document. And, I could have paid a lawyer $2,000 to do the same thing. But
Uh,
so part of it is Claude, part of it is me asking, but also part of it is me knowing that I don't know everything that goes in that document. Claude probably does, but
right.
it's not going to tell me what's missing unless I ask it to tell me what's missing. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. I really like that a lot. And so the beginning piece that you said is think through what are the assumptions that we're making when we're giving instructions. Or what are we assuming that it already knows? And instead of making those assumptions, outline them very specifically, right? Don't assume anything. Make sure we're giving a thorough input. And then the last piece of the puzzle, which I really like that I personally do, is when you give a prompt, ask what are pieces that are missing. Please ask me 5 questions to help you give a better response, right? And then
Exactly.
it'll help give those outputs.
Exactly. One way to look at it in terms of your instructions and the assumptions you're making is, if you have a little girl and I don't know, she's 4 years old and you want to teach her how to tie a shoe, you know,
Mm.
you show her how to put on the shoe and then you walk her through making the bow, right? And then she practices it a few times and that's that. Because she's seen other people wear shoes. She's seen you put on her shoes and tie her shoes for her.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
imagine a person who grew up in a society where they don't wear shoes. And not only that, they don't have ropes and they don't tie knots. Are you going to teach a 4-year-old girl from that society how to put on her shoe and tie her shoe the same way as you would teach one from your society? Of course not.
Right. Of course
So
not.
the AI is a little bit like the society that grew up without any shoes or ropes. It's
Mm.
sophisticated in some ways. It's incredibly capable in terms of its intelligence, but it's also sort of naive or ignorant in other ways. And you have to compensate for that possibility in your instructions.
Nice. Compensate for the possibility of the AI being naive in other ways. So
Yeah.
outline things very specifically what you want it to do before
Yeah.
making any assumptions, which is great. Your example there of the little girl teaching her how to tie the shoes, right? The one assumption that you made was that she knows which foot to put which shoe on.
Hmm.
There you go. So just another interesting example, right? And so that for the example
That's
for AI,
perfect.
I'd be
That's
like,
the
yeah,
kind of thinking you need to do. Yeah.
yeah, right. What are these assumptions? And so I love that. And so when it first came out, right, you were pretty negative to it, but now you've learned to refine it and how you can make it more specific in a user's voice to help
Hmm.
create better copywriting. And
Yeah.
so you were negative towards AI, but you're very pro copywriting. Take us back a little bit, David. Let's tell a little bit more of your story. When did you first get into the writing space and how even did you get into that space?
At age 8, I wrote
Hmm.
uh, um, a letter for the PTA newsletter at Meadow Hall Elementary in Rockville, Maryland. It was
No
a very
way.
short story. It's called The $10 Billion Duck. Um, and it was like 3 paragraphs. It was published. It was about this duck who got caught in the precious city, pretty city zoo and um, started killing all the other animals and said he didn't want to live in a duck graveyard, so he decided to live in peace. That was my story. This was the same year my brother was born. I've asked anyone with a psychological background not to try and go any
Sure.
further with that. Um, and
That's so
then,
funny.
yeah, and then that year also, so there's this cereal. You lived in the United States, so you probably know it. It's Post Sugar
Of course.
Smacks and
Absolutely.
Sugar Bear. And so when I was 8 years old, I was eating my Sugar Smacks. In the back of the cereal box, there was this story about Sugar Bear had stolen the beehive from the bees to get the honey, and all the bees were swarming after him. And how could he protect himself from the bees? And
Wow.
so I thought, oh, well, that's simple. You just take a bowl of Sugar Smacks, put it on the other side of the meadow, and all the bees will go to the Sugar Smacks because everybody likes Sugar Smacks. And I sent that in, and,
Nice.
and I won a Sugar Bear doll. They
No
gave me a
way.
prize. Yeah. So
Wow.
I think that was like a clue that copywriting
Sure.
was probably my path, but I had no idea. But writing did come easily to me. Good writing, not easy, but I didn't have to do
Sure.
that for many years. Um, was editor of my high school newspaper. I actually went to a summer
Oh,
camp,
wow.
journalism summer camp in Pontiac, Michigan. And I was like the editor of that page, the Pontiac Press. There were about 5 or 6 of us, and they actually published the page. When I went to college in Michigan, um, I spent a year abroad in France, in south of France, and I announced that I would be the foreign correspondent for the Michigan Daily. And they said, okay, send us some stories. If they're any good, we'll publish them. And, so I'd been doing it in all kinds of different ways. And I hated advertising. I still hate most
Really?
advertising. I think it's a big scam and a waste of money. And I'm talking about a lot of the TV commercials, like uh, when there's uh, an insurance agent wearing a detective badge and an emu. I mean, what a freaking waste of money.
Sure,
And there's
sure.
lots of things like that. And I couldn't see it, but I didn't know anything about direct response copywriting really um, until after I'd finished my journalism career. I had a journalism career, went from Florida to DC to New York to Chicago to San Francisco, and you know, just you know, realized I wasn't happy. I wanted to be, I wanted to be an advocate for things. I wanted to be, uh, I, I, I wanted to be able to get behind things. And in those days, journalists weren't supposed to take positions. Things are a
Sure.
little weird right now in a lot of ways in journalism, and I don't want to
Uh,
go there, but
then
um,
you're supposed to be more neutral, but you want to be an advocate. But David, let me just pause you there for just a quick second. It's so interesting for me to hear that, you can trace it back all the way to age 8, where you wrote a piece for the PTA newsletter, and then you responded to the back of the cereal box, and it got published. And so writing came somewhat naturally to you, but good writing and copywriting didn't. And then, you mentioned you had a long journalism career. We'll dive into that here in a second, right? Because you didn't feel great about it. You wanted to move on to a little bit more. You want to advocate for things.
sure.
But what I'm curious about is that you mentioned that you really don't like advertising, or you used to at least not. Talk to everybody. What's the difference between when you say you didn't like advertising and then direct response marketing or direct response copywriting?
Okay. So advertising, the way most people understand it, and this has changed a lot in the last 5 years because of YouTube and Facebook and other online stuff. But let's go back before then, if people are old enough to remember. Ads in magazines, ads in newspapers, ads on TV, um, ads in the radio were a little more direct response. But a lot of these ads, the whole idea with this advertising was you establish a brand. People get to know your brand, and so they want to buy from you. Well, I've never seen any proof of that. All of the big companies that use advertising to establish a brand also have a lot of other people and a lot of networks and systems to actually sell the product. People, you know, I mean, I've never bought insurance from that company that uses the gecko or the company that uses the emu. Um, and I make fun of the ads with the emu on my podcast on a regular basis, but that's about the extent that they're even in my consciousness. And so when you have a big company like Coca-Cola or Pepsi or Dr. Pepper, um, you can run those ads. And those companies also have distributors. They also have executives that go into Walmart and you know Costco and they have people actually doing the selling.
Sure,
So
sure.
that's one side of advertising. For a small business, that makes no sense at all. It makes
Yeah,
zero
just
sense.
advertising purely for brand awareness, right?
Yeah, only doing that and
Mm,
spending
mm,
money on that. I mean, but direct response copy gets a response. It gets an action, and the action could be go to my webpage and sign up for my email list or get a free, lead mag, or it could be book an appointment, or it could be, you know, buy this product.
yeah.
And to me, that makes a lot more sense, and that's something that works for small businesses, for entrepreneurs, for solo
Yeah.
practitioners.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's the biggest difference here, right? If we're talking about advertising that you said that you disliked was very much just brand awareness, right?
Right.
The gecko for Geico, just remember it. the emu for I know exactly what the commercials are you're talking about. I have no clue what the brand is. And
Yep.
then Coca-Cola doing tons of right and Pepsi tons of ads, just brand awareness, which
Yeah.
makes no sense for smaller companies or actually get people to take action. Where direct response is giving them some copy, typically telling a story, and then asking them to directly take an action.
Right. And when I said I hated advertising, brand advertising was all I knew. I didn't know about direct
Mm,
response. We're kind of the black sheep or the, you know, redhead stepchild of the advertising industry because,
right.
those guys make money because, they just run the same ads to build the brand over and over again and get 15% of what the advertiser has to spend on the network or in the publication. So they make a lot of money. They're the madmen. They're the cool guys.
Mm, mm, mm.
Um, Now things have changed. I mean, this attitude I'm talking about is more appropriate 10 years ago than now. Things have changed a lot. Everyone, because you can measure everything on the web, metrics are important,
Measure
and
it.
the metrics people want suddenly. A lot of companies realize, oh, wait a minute, advertising actually can produce sales. Oh, wow. But I didn't know that. And, a funny thing is, I had bought a lot of things from direct response advertising. I had subscribed to things. I found stuff in comic books that I'd sent away for, but I didn't realize it was advertising. That didn't look like
Uh,
advertising to me. That looked like
no,
information about something I wanted to buy. And
perfect.
that's what direct response is. Now,
Perfect.
you'll hear the term junk mail and you'll see some stuff, people go to jail or get fined by the FTC, so over that top. That's the stuff that calls attention to itself that's usually bad, really outrageous. But the really good stuff, you don't even know it's advertising. It's just like information. Oh, that looks good. Let me check that out. Oh yeah, I think I'll get that.
Nice, nice. I like that a lot actually. And so today's day and age, it's changed a lot, right? It's you want to be looking for the stuff that's more measurable, first off,
Hmm.
and then also, as you said, the really good advertisements or direct response marketing. You don't even know it's advertisements. It's just more informational that you sort of want to take action on. And so, David, let's keep carrying on with your story, right? So you told me you were a journalist for about 10 years. You got this big promotion as the chief for world news in San Francisco. Something,
Hmm.
but you weren't happy. What was going on?
Well, I was. This was the time when the Macintosh was coming out. I mean, it was a really exciting time in technology in Silicon Valley, but I didn't like the work. I didn't like working for a big old gray, starchy, New York based company. It wasn't fun. Um, I didn't like the office politics because, I only had a couple people and they were working for me. I was the boss, but there were a lot of other people in the office, and there was, um, a lot of dick measuring contests all the time.
Mm,
And um, so I didn't particularly like that. But I didn't know what I was looking for. I just knew it didn't feel right. And I started to, you know, when you start drinking too much and you just feel bad, something's wrong. So I
uh,
quit.
but it's interesting, right? So you said it was just it sounds like a lot of politics were going on the inside, despite it being a very exciting time. And you told me before the interview that everybody around you said that you were crazy for quitting and that it was such an amazing job.
Right.
Things didn't feel right. How can someone almost separate what others are saying versus these feelings that you're having, and how can you understand them to be the truth when there's so many people on the outside saying no, it's amazing, stick with it? You probably start to second guess yourself, being like, oh well, I must be, maybe I should keep giving another shot. How do we know, how do we decipher those feelings?
Um, you just need to have a strong internal compass, and I really don't know. I think most people do, but most people have very efficiently obscured their own ability to see it.
Mm.
I don't know. That's I'm I'm a copywriting coach, not a life coach.
No, that's fine, right? I'm just curious your own experience. I mean, so it sounds like for you, it was just very much a feeling of being unhappy, depressed, you're drinking too much, and those were the signs that you decided, I don't care what
Well,
anybody else says.
yeah, I mean, I'm a very intuitive person. I have a well-developed introverted side, but I don't frequently have these, revelations of, oh, this is how it is, or this is what I need to do. It's like I'm not always that super decisive. Um, I just sort of get into things and do them. But when something really feels wrong, it's like there's something very powerful inside me that won't let me continue with it.
Nice. Okay, gotcha. So it was a little individualized. And so you left, right?
Hmm.
Without knowing what you're going to do next.
Yep.
So where did your career go?
Well, I noticed that the analysts that we would call as a reporter, I noticed that I don't know, I think I thought they made a lot of money and they had an easy life. And so I started to try to do that, and I realized they didn't make a lot of money, and their work was much harder than what I'd been doing. I didn't know how good I'd had it. I tried that. I just tried different things. Finally, I realized I need to. Well, it's funny. I needed to learn how to close sales, but I didn't even know what I was selling. But I ended up taking sales training a couple years after I went out on my own, and that really changed my life in a lot of ways, because
So
the
this was the period where you decided you're going to work for yourself. You're not looking for another job. You've gone out on your own. Okay, great. And then you decided, let me get some sales training.
Yeah, it was that time. That's right. And
Wonderful.
and this guy, his name is Jim Camp. He's become he's no longer with us, but he's become kind of famous since then. He's a negotiation expert. And his business is called Controlled Sales and Negotiation Group. And I took some training from him. We had a probably one of the most emotional relationships I've had with anyone in my life, even family. Um, we got very close. Then he fired me. Then we stayed out of touch for a while. Then um, we reconnected maybe 10, 15 years later. Then towards the end of his life, I was working for him again. He was trying to put all his material up on a Salesforce platform. Um, but he was the first coach I'd ever had. He was the first man I'd ever met who really had access to it, understood, and could explain emotion in
Interesting.
in a way that reached me. And I think that sort of laid the predicate for me becoming a copywriter and a copywriting coach. Um,
Wow. Wow.
and
So
that,
he was the first sales coach that you found, but also did talked about negotiation. And it
yeah,
sounds like you got to start working with him, and he was very emotionally based and taught you how to understand emotions and then probably how to express them, which goes into copywriting.
yeah.
Wow. Interesting. And so very, very open down relationship with him. And so that's where you first sort of got into the industry or
Oh no,
what
I didn't get into copywriting until about 6 years later, but I
oh,
learned a lot from him. I mean, I did other things. I don't even remember what I did. Those are sort of lost years. Oh,
wow.
I met a guy who was the top sales guy at Avis Fleet Rentals, and he was having trouble writing a book, and so we decided to split the royalties, and I wrote it with him. It was called Effective Sales Management. And I didn't even want my name on it because I don't know how to manage salespeople. I mean, where could that go for me? What good would that be? Um, I did that. I ended up getting into public speaking and um, public speaking coaching. I had a partner, and we had a class for a while on public speaking that we gave in a living room. Um, yeah,
So
just
lots of different stuff. Right? You're trying
yeah,
you're trying to find your way as an entrepreneur. And so
yeah.
how did you find your way?
When I discovered copywriting, that pulled everything else into focus for me. And,
And so you discovery, you mentioned a newsletter to me. Is that right? Or
yeah.
where did we go?
And then shortly after I saw the newsletter, I was in a lot of trouble. I was like years behind in my taxes. I was kind of broke. People wouldn't want to answer this is when people still answered the phone, back in the
Uh,
90s. Um, People didn't want to take my calls because they knew I was going to be asking for money. Um,
oh,
and Gary Halbert, so Hurricane Andrew hit Florida. I don't know if you know anything about it.
I don't recall. Yeah.
It was awful. It was really bad. And Gary lived down in Key West, and he said he was going to do a seminar for Hurricane Andrew relief, that you didn't have to pay to go to the seminar. You just had to write a check at the end, to based on what it was worth to you, to the Red Cross.
Or the relief fund. Okay, for the Red Cross.
And so I went there, and uh, that was amazing. I met maybe 10 people there, that some of whom are still really close friends, that changed the course of my life. I mean, a lot of the experts in entrepreneurial direct, well, there's Gary Halbert, there was his son Bond, um, David Deutsch, John Carlton, Carl Galletti, Dan Kennedy, Ted Nicholas. Um, I don't even remember who else, but I met all these people and talked with them, and um, took notes like crazy, and subscribed to their newsletters. I mean, that was like a turning point for me.
Wow, nice. Getting to learn from Gary Halbert. Um,
Yep.
and so that was a turning point. And you're in business for yourself. And where did you go from here? To obviously we're working our way up to today where we're at Novus AI, and so now you found copywriting. What's next?
Yeah. Yeah. Kept kept writing copy. Always interested in story. Took this class in Marin County on screenwriting, and the teacher would say something, and I would say, that reminds me of something from the tawdry world of copywriting. And he'd roll his eyes and say, "Yes, David." And uh, but after class, a couple girls in the class came up to me. They were both published writers. One was a working journalist, and one was a published novelist. And they noticed I had a new car, and I was really happy. I love copywriting. And they said, "David, what is this copywriting thing you talk about? Would you teach it to us?" And I said,
Uh,
"Well, if you wouldn't mind if I recorded it and sold um, including your voices, sold what was on it." And they said, "No, we wouldn't mind." So I mean, I couldn't, like, I didn't have, we didn't have this technology in those days to do your own audio. Uh, so I hired an engineer from New Dimensions Radio, audio engineer, came in my apartment. We recorded the whole thing. And I turned into a tape and workbook course, sent to a friend of mine, Joe Vitale, very famous guy now, but at the time, not as famous, um, copywriter, author, marketer. And he knew this guy named Mark Joyner. And this is around the year 2000. Mark was pioneer in internet marketing, way ahead of the curve. And Joe said, "David, I think you ought to send a copy of your course to Mark. He might be able to put it online." Well, that was a revelation. Nobody was putting audio courses online 25 years ago, 24 years ago. So I did. And I got this email from Mark. He said, "David, I'm in my car. I've only listened to half of the first cassette. And
uh,
yeah, I definitely want to put this online." And so, like, the
nice.
first week, we sold $6,000 worth of units online. I thought, "Oh, okay, my life has
Wow.
changed again. This is really
Sure.
amazing." And so, I came up with other courses, other things, other ideas, um, like that.
It's wonderful. Just to take two steps back. Going from you quit your job, you were in this 6 year little bit hiatus where you were public speaking and ghostwriting and trying to figure out all these different things until when you decided to go get some more education and surrounded yourself with these new people that you were meeting. right? All these big names today. That's really what made the shift, huh? Tons
Hmm.
of learning and practicing. Of course, you're working in copywriting. Um, I try and give so much actionable advice to people on the show as possible. And so, how important do you think it is to to go surround yourself with people? I don't know if they're like-minded people or just if you have an inclination to go one direction. Do we always start with learning? Do we always start with seminars? What's the best way?
I think you need um, to, you know, keep your curiosity open and look at a lot of things. And as much as you can, learn to listen to yourself inside. I mean, that's been a long process for me, literally decades to really learn to because the body communicates with feelings. I mean, there's an interesting book called Focusing by Eugene Gendlin, which teaches a technique for body awareness, which might be a good book to get.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's true that you want to surround yourself with great people and you want to learn stuff. But when I went to Key West, it was not, Jason will tell you that he didn't develop all of the breakthrough AI stuff for copywriting out of, curiosity and a desire to learn. He did it out of desperation.
Oh, wow.
He had to because his business was expanding too fast and he couldn't keep hiring copywriters. The margins were too thin. The management problems were unbelievable. And so he found a way to produce all that himself with AI. It was the same thing for me when I went to, Gary Halbert's seminar in Key West, the Hurricane Andrew seminar. It wasn't that, and I am a very curiosity driven person. I really am, but it wasn't, gee, I'm curious. I wonder what would happen if it was more like I was desperate. I had to figure, I didn't think,
That's
oh
great.
man, if I can meet 10 people that will, you know, are very high level I can hang out with and will change my life. I didn't think
Mm.
that. I thought, man, I need to do something, and this is an opportunity I can't afford not to do. That you get the difference?
I absolutely do. Actually speaking to Jason, he mentioned to me, he said the words that your biggest breakthroughs come out of necessity, and that if we're willing to innovate, then your biggest challenges can turn into your biggest competitive edge. It
I,
sounds like
I
that's what
think
you're talking about.
I think that's right. Yeah, it is. That is what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's right. True.
Yeah, unbelievable. And so you're a copywriter. You started coaching people. You were launching online courses. And now fast forward all the way to today to Novus AI. And you mentioned that Jason, he was running a pretty big copywriting business as well, right? Sounds like he was had tons of clients. He couldn't manage all of these employees, these contractors that he was hiring. So he developed this software. And so talk to us a little bit more about how you got involved and let's just dive a little bit deeper into the business.
Yeah, well, he writes a lot of copy for clients, and so I think he realized he had something, so he started this mastermind. So a weekly mastermind,
Mm.
and he gives away um we call them agents. There's an online, it's an API technically. There's this online service, it's simpler than it sounds, called Poe, where you can make your own agents. You just paste the instructions into it and save it instead of having to enter all the instructions in all the prompts each time. So he started this thing, and I don't know, we've got like 70 people in it now, I think, paid members. And these are people who are doing real business. Now, for me, I'm not writing a lot of copy, but I do produce a lot of content, including,
Yeah.
um, you know, uh, most of my podcasts, which are scripted, which is about 3,000 words. It needs to read real smooth and have some value and be entertaining and be different from what people have heard. And, for a while, I was promoting my book daily. I was doing posts on LinkedIn. I've been banned from Facebook. Don't ask me why. I don't know. I'm done
Oh
with them.
man.
Uh, yeah. I think it was a mistake, but I'm glad. Facebook sucked up way too much of my time. But I'm, on
Oh,
LinkedIn and Twitter X, and I was doing sometimes, a post a day. It'd take 2 hours. Jason helped me develop. a little agent that would write a complete post in about 15 minutes, including the editing. Um, and sometimes I want to see how far I could push it. So I did 3 posts in one day once. I mean, that
Yeah.
was unheard of before. And this is in addition to, running another business, you know, coaching people and doing a podcast, other things, working on a course. So but I'm also in there. I'm interested, I'm interested in helping him develop stuff and developing stuff with him and, learning different ways to use it on my own. Um, and I really think we will have a major impact on the industry. We still have we need to get past Poe and we're very close. So we need to have our own API, our own interface where we can put all of our different agents in, and we've been hiring programmers to do that. But I'm excited. I mean, the, I came out here to San Francisco, really at the start of the popular takeoff of Silicon Valley, and I always wanted to do something with Silicon Valley, but I always felt Silicon Valley and copywriting, no, they don't fit
Nice.
together. And now for the first time they do, and only with us and a handful of other companies. Um, when ChatGPT, I did this post on Twitter yesterday. ChatGPT came out 2 years ago, and they said, well, ChatGPT is a form of our large language model that does conversational copywriting. And in this like 2 paragraph introduction, I found 7 words I would never, ever, ever use in copywriting and never
Wow.
have in having written millions of words. So, um, you know, I mean, most people don't understand how to do copywriting. It's a painful experience because you have to unlearn most of what you learned about writing and then relearn it through a new lens. So, you know, um,
Yeah.
in some ways, we don't have a lot of competition.
Hey, I mean, that's a great thing to not have a lot of competition. And so just to make sure that everybody's following along, right? So you're talking about these AI agents. Can you just
Mhm.
define what an AI agent is for us?
Sure. So normally when you go to ChatGPT, or Claude or Gemini or Perplexity, you're gonna or Yama or one of those, you're going to type in something and it'll output something or it'll stall or it'll tell you that's not appropriate or whatever it'll do. An AI agent is where you're able to store much more detailed prompts, prompts sometimes 5, 10 pages long that go through a whole series of things like you would tell um, a junior copywriter, a cub, an intern who's just learning how to
Uh,
write copy.
uh,
All of those instructions are embedded within it. And that's not the part you see. All you see is a place to put your prompt in, but it's already programmed, so to speak. Programming is not exactly the right word, to do a certain task. So like Jason has a holiday campaign agent, and um, all you need to do is tell the agent what the product is, how much it costs, what it's called, what it looks like, maybe something from a sales page, and it will write out 10 emails, which, you might pay a copywriter, a good one, 3, 4, $5,000 for. It'll do it in
yeah.
2 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
In 2 minutes. These AI agents have a lot of stored and saved the background information, background knowledge, and instructions that it's going to always reference when you are giving a new prompt, a new set of instructions. When you say,
Exactly.
I have a new product, write me sales emails. Now it goes and references all this past information first, all of its instructions before it performs a duty. And I'm guessing a
That's
lot of
right.
those instructions are these pieces of like the assumptions that we talked about earlier, right? These other instructions already go through those assumptions.
Right. I mean, a big part of it is teaching it how to write, teaching it
Nice.
giving it a list of bad words like unlock and delve and
Oh,
elevate and things people don't say
uh,
in real life, but the AI says all the time. Part
yeah,
of it is teaching it what kind of verbs to use, what kind of nouns to use, what kind of sentence structure to use, how long the paragraph should be. Um, and then, the macro structure of an email, of a sales email, how it needs to start, and, you know, give it 10 different subject lines and 10 different, preview lines and 3 different leads. And it'll
sure.
do all that. It'll do that in
Great.
seconds.
That's great.
It takes
Great.
it takes some time to write those, those saved prompts for the agent.
Of course.
But once you've done it, it's like packaged, it's like sealed, and it's like software.
That's yeah, it's like software. That's wonderful, David. So for anybody listening, I mean, I guess I sort of have two questions. One is who's the primary target audience, right? Anybody out there that's listening that should come find you guys. And the second one, I'm curious, like how they can sort of get their feet wet. I suppose if you guys have a starting thing that can help people learn how to do this, get into the space themselves. And so yeah, so who's your guys' primary target audience, and then how can sort of people get an introduction?
Okay, so we're especially looking for e-commerce store owners that need to generate a lot of advertising. You know, um, Media buyers, copywriters with not very super beginner copywriters, but copywriters with some experience. Um, Online business owners,
Mm,
even people who are, well, course creators, people like that. Just generally people who can who understand the basics and have some experience with direct response copy. Okay. Um, that's and if people want to find out, you can go to getmynovus.ai. Get my my novus novus.ai, and there's a website there, and there's a banner right at the top of the landing page that says, VIP, join our VIP mastermind or join our mastermind. Um, and so that's how you can find out about the paid version. The free version, I think we're going to be working on some new things, but right now, Jason has a Facebook group. I'm not sure what it's called. It's something like Jason Parker AI copywriting secrets or Novus AI secrets. I don't know. There's a lot of information in there.
okay, great. I mean, that's probably enough keywords there. Jason Parker, copywriting AI secrets, Novus. If we
Yeah,
type that into to Facebook, we'll find the group, and I'll go find it and I'll link to it down in the show notes below, because that's
yeah,
probably then a great place for people to start to get their feet wet as far as maybe creating their own agents, learning how to prompt inside of ChatGPT or wherever it might be, and then they can go explore Novus AI as well, especially if, like you said, they are digital business owners, copywriters, advertisers that already have some experience with direct response.
yes.
That's great. And so, David, I'm curious, right? Always when I start to wrap up the show, I like to ask everybody sort of about the overarching theme, right? Show's called
Hmm.
Journey to Legacy, and you had an amazing journey up to this point, and now you are working on something that could be, it's sounding to me like the biggest thing that you've done yet.
I think so.
And so what is the, what's the legacy that you're looking to actually leave on this world, and what does legacy even mean to you?
Well, I've never been big on legacy. I figure you do what you can while you're here to make the world a better place, and you leave behind what's valuable. And I guess my books are kind of my legacy. But I thought about your question when when you asked me, and I think it's a great question. Um, I'm thinking maybe uh, I'm not even sure when before the turn of the century.
Mm,
At some point, I came up with this idea, this mission that I
mm.
was going to eradicate copywriting illiteracy from the world. It's
Okay.
funny for a couple of reasons. It's impossible. I mean, half the people in the US have below a sixth grade reading level. So give me a break. Um, but uh, secondly, I use two very big words in my mission, which sort of indicated
Eradicate.
my own copywriting illiteracy at the time. Um, eradicate and illiteracy.
Literacy.
But I can see now, looking backward, probably 30 years, um, that um, our that as we go forward with Novus, it may actually achieve my legacy. I mean, obviously we're in to make money, and we're going to be selling a lot of high-end products to a lot of big customers, but in the course of the way, we'll probably have a lot of free trials and maybe some lower end products and maybe some manuals that show people how to do this themselves. And that'll be the closest I'll ever be able to come to fulfilling that mission, which would be my legacy.
I love that. Helping to eradicate copywriting illiteracy. So funny that you say it, right? That's already breaking so many rules for copywriting.
I
But
know, I know.
overarching, even when you started your answer, David, about around that you don't really like the thought of legacy. You've never been driven by that. You just said that you make the difference while you're here, right? That in
Yeah.
itself is the answer that a lot of people give me, right? Is making a difference, helping others. And now, where you swung all the way around to the end, that Novus actually is going to help accomplish that mission that you set about at the turn of the century. Um, People won't necessarily be able to do it themselves from scratch with a pen and a piece of paper, but it will absolutely help the masses to be able to perform direct response marketing and convey a great, simple message and idea and make a sale happen.
No, they won't, but I made up a little story. Let me tell it to you, and
Please.
then I'll tell you what I was thinking. Okay. Um, so a couple guys walk into a bar. One of them's wearing a work shirt and he's a little nervous. One of them has a computer and a little microphone and a tripod. And they sit down, and the guy in the work shirt says, "Jason, I am freaking out. We've got Christmas, um, Black Friday coming up, Cyber Monday coming up, Christmas sales coming up. I don't know what to do." And Jason takes out his computer, he sets up his tripod, and he just asks the guy about 6 questions into the microphone. And guy answers him and just types a bunch of stuff. And Jason says, "Okay." The guy says, "What do you mean, okay? I told you, I'm freaked out. I don't know what to do." And Jason says, "Check your phone." The guy opens up his email, and there's complete email campaign for Black Friday, a complete email campaign for Cyber Monday, and 3 campaigns for Christmas.
Oh,
Okay.
oh,
We're pretty close to doing that already. All right.
nice.
And so you say it won't be with pen and paper, and I agree with you, but it could be with a microphone. It could
Wow.
be with the microphone. I mean, there are AI agents that can ask you questions now we've been playing with. You can ask Jason more about this if you want, because I don't know all the details, but I got freaked out the first time I used it because of what it was able to do in 3 minutes, just talking to me and then transcribing and organizing my answers.
Wow.
The stuff's so amazing. It's going to get so simple. It could be that there will be tablets that are exactly like paper and you will be able to use a pen and paper. It's possible.
It's extremely possible. Anything is possible, and it's great to hear that we're already very close to that. Like you said, with a microphone, right? With
Mm-hmm.
a few different prompts of questions around what are you selling, who's your
Right.
customer,
And
what's the
you don't need a
price point.
microphone. You can use this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And they'll simply prompt you, you'll answer, and it'll spit out the perfect.
No, you can
direct
just talk
response
to it.
copywriting.
You can talk to it.
Yeah.
It won't prompt you. It'll just ask you a question. It's going to be like the conversation that we're having. It's going to be no different pretty soon.
That's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, I know.
It's an exciting time.
I know. These are exciting times to live in.
It's super
Chinese said, "May you live in interesting times." And boy, on the positive and negative side, both we are. Yes.
Love that. David, well, thank you so much for being here. Everybody can go check out Novus AI at, is it getmynovus.ai?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Once again, I appreciate you so much for being here, sharing your story, and sharing all about the future of copywriting.
Thank you, Wayne. This was a great conversation. I appreciate it.
And that's a wrap, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Journey to Legacy podcast. Let me know what you thought. One of the biggest takeaways here I have is that when you're using artificial intelligence, right? ChatGPT, one of these types of written language models of artificial intelligence, don't make any assumptions when you're asking it questions, when you're giving it prompts, right? Think through how you are speaking or typing to it and fill in all those blanks. David gave that example of you're teaching a little girl how to tie her shoes, right? And he said, right, okay, you tell her, to tighten the shoe and then how to fold the laces and make a knot. And I said, well, hey, David, you made this assumption that she knew which foot to put the shoe on, right? And so we can think through, make sure we're not using any of these assumptions in our prompts. You're going to get way better responses out, as well as that tip of asking ChatGPT, what are 5 or 10 questions that you can ask me that'll help you to give a better response, can really, really drastically improve the actual outputs that you get from these AI models. And so thank you all for tuning in, right? Go learn more about Novus AI. Go learn about David some more as well. And if you're listening to this, please come join us in the Journey to Legacy community. It is a home for like-minded individuals that are all working to better this world, to leave a meaningful, lasting legacy, most of the time of helping others. So come check us out over at journeytolegacy.org. Until next time, thank you for tuning in. My name is Wayne Veldsman, and you've been listening to the Journey to Legacy podcast.